Hey, breaking news coming out of Guantanamo Bay. Two people charged with the 2002 Bali bombings, Mohammed Nazir bin Lep and Mohammed Farik bin Amin, have pled guilty to their roles in the Bali bombings, even though they've been held incommunicado with CIA black sites where they were tortured and also at Guantanamo Bay for the last 14 years. Um, it's right out of the blue. In fact, they made a deal with the government and that they would actually uh, give evidence against the alleged mastermind of the 2002 Bali bombing attacks, Ensap Nurjaman, also known as Hambali, who is currently held at Guantanamo Bay. And I did a long article on him, which I'll um, release to the description box for you to read. But let's read here. Two Malaysians in Guantanamo Bay pled guilty to conspiring in the Bali bombings. Malaysians Mohammed Nazir bin Lep and Mohammed Farik bin Amin have pled guilty to conspiring in the co-conspiring in 2002 Bali bombings that killed more than 200 people. It's the second most deadliest terrorist attack in the 9/11 period, with 9/11 being number one. A lot of people don't talk about the Bali bombings either, and I'm surprised at that. There's a huge connection between them and bin Laden. Bin Laden is alleged to have given a blessing, and allegedly the members of the group Jemaah Islamiyah, which is an Indonesian terrorist group with close connections with Al Qaeda, which alleged that they got the bomb-making materials from them. The two then appeared in front of a military court at the U.S. Naval Base in Guantanamo Bay on Tuesday, in proceedings broadcast via a video link to reporters in the United States. Bin Lep and bin Amin pled guilty to 5 of the 9 charges against them, according to Benar News, making the first time they had entered a plea since they were brought to Guantanamo since 17 years. I said 14, 17 years ago. Charges related to the 2003 attack on a Marriott hotel in Jakarta that killed 11 people were dropped as part of the plea deal, according to the New York Times. And the men agreed to give evidence against alleged Indonesian mastermind Ensap Nurjaman, also known as Hambali, the bin Laden of Southeast Asia. Bin Lep and bin Amin were accused of being Hambali's accomplices and charged alongside, excuse me, but their cases were separated last year. The Malaysians will be sentenced next week, after which they are expected to be returned home, where they will serve that sentence. Hambali was once described by former U.S. President George W. Bush as one of the world's most lethal terrorists, is still to go on trial. Through his lawyers, Hambali has alleged that he was brutally tortured during his arrest in Thailand in 2003, after which he says he was transferred to a secret detention camp run by the CIA and tortured as part of the agency's rendition detention and interrogation program, which is sometimes referred to as the torture program in short, and it is. The attacks on the Bali clubs in October of 2002 were the worst in Indonesian history and led to a crackdown on hardline groups such as Jemaah Islamiyah and a strengthening of Jakarta's counterterrorism operations. 3 of the main perpetrators of the bombings were sentenced to death, and they were Imam Samudra, Amrozi, and Muklas. They were executed in 2008, while the 4th, Ali Imran, was jailed for life after he apologized and expressed remorse for what he'd done. In fact, I think Journeyman Pictures did a great expose on Ali Imran, in which Ali Imran had met with some of the victims' families in the Bali bombings and tried to apologize to them. In 2022, Indonesian jailed Zulkarnain, a senior member of the Jemaah Islamiyah, who had been on the run for 20 years to 15 years of prison over the attacks. Now, one must say, these guys weren't tortured, I think, but yes, they were. They were actually tortured. Mohammed Nazir bin Lep, let's go with him, and I'm going to read a bio from him off the Guantanamo Review Board. He's a Malaysian national alleged to be affiliated with the group Jemaah Islamiyah and Al Qaeda, and he's currently in DOD custody at Guantanamo. He's actually one of 120, I think, detainees that were held at CIA black sites all over Europe and Southeast Asia and the Middle East. And he was subjected to the enhanced interrogation techniques. In his Guantanamo detainment, he'd been detained at Guantanamo Bay since 2006. And throughout bin Lep's internment, the Malaysian government has sought to repatriate him, in addition to another Malaysian national, which was Mohammed Farik Amin. Now, what they did was basically they probably didn't want to serve their whole lives in Guantanamo. They're going back home to Indonesia. So the jails there are a lot more lenient and they are here. Jails here are fucking brutal. Just look at Adamak Super Prison in Colorado. It's actually pretty much a torture dungeon, but psychologically. So yeah, this is the reason why they pled guilty, or else they didn't have to. In fact, they would have been a forever detainee, just like Abu Zubaydah is. There's no evidence against them, but they're too dangerous to release. I don't know what that means, but thanks to the Bush administration, November 2001, he circumvented the Geneva Conventions for foreign detainees, and that all laws pertaining to the Geneva Conventions are suspended when the president labels somebody a terrorist, especially it's a foreign national. And so he went through a lot there. And Mohammed Farik bin Amin, he's alleged to be a senior member of Jemaah Islamiyah and Al Qaeda as well, and he's currently also in Guantanamo, Indian Ocean island of Diego Garcia, and that is basically near the British Indian Territory, where these two men were confessed to as scouting out possible sites for terrorist bombings throughout Thailand. And Time magazine actually wrote a report that Mohammed Farik Amin and Mohammed bin Lep and Hambali, these three were captured together in central Thailand on August 11, 2003. And the document says that Hambali and bin Lep were captured together, but only that Amin was captured sometime in 2003. There's some discrepancy there. Nevertheless, they were all captured in that. Now, here's the thing that CIA said when they tortured Mohammed Farik bin Lep, bin Amin, that through the torture, they got actual intelligence, and he was tortured at CIA custody at Cobalt, which was a detention site. And supposedly that his information stopped a number of terrorist bombings and led to the arrest of Hambali, which was not true because the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence Committee study the Central Intelligence Agency detention and interrogation program, the report said that bin Amin and bin Lep's information didn't give the whereabouts of Hambali. Actually, they got Hambali through signals intelligence. Remember what I said about signals intelligence, the NSA, and Thailand's own investigation as well, that were running in a safe house, and that's how they captured Hambali with his girlfriend and whatnot. At the same time, they caught bin Lep and bin Amin not too far from there. Here's the thing, is that all three of these guys were tortured. They were sent to CIA detention sites. Some of them went to Cobalt. One went to, I think, I'm reading his profile now, and it doesn't say where bin Lep was held at. But bin Amin, Mohammed Farik Amin was held at CIA Cobalt. And I think Hambali went to Lithuania or another country where he was tortured as well. In fact, when I look up Hambali, Ridwan Samudin, he's also known as, he was 75 kilometers north of Bangkok, where he was captured along with bin Amin. And when he was sent to the CIA black sites, through the report states that in 2014 is when the report was released, Hambali was told by an interrogator, and this is coming straight from the report, quote, "We can never let the world know what we have done to you," end quote. So in other words, they were never going to let him go because they tortured the living shit out of this guy. You think he was going to say what they wanted to hear? Sure. Is he guilty? I don't know. Now, he could be. He could be a mad bomber. His history says so. But at the same time, when it comes to certain instances, I don't know. I don't know. And that's exactly where this whole problem comes, right? Is that you can't say definitively yes or no, right? You're through the evidence or the lack thereof, you basically can't, without it, you cannot specifically definitive state that he was guilty or innocent, right? And maybe this was the whole reason for the CIA detention and interrogation program, was that they'll torture everybody involved with 9/11. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ramzi bin al-Shib, Mustafa al-Hassawi, Amr al-Baluchi, Tawfiq bin Atash, Khalad, right? Those are the five charged for the 9/11 attacks. for the Bali bombings, you had Ridwan Ismuddin, Hambali, right, and Sap Nurisman, Mohammed Nazir bin Lep, and Mohammed bin Farik Amin, right? They were captured. They were sent to CIA black sites and they were tortured. Everybody was tortured in the two worst terrorist attacks in the United States. Even with the USS Cole bombing, they tortured Taufik bin Attash and they tortured al-Libi, right? I'm sorry. Forgetting name. Forgive me, I forgot. It's another guy. Um, but they were tortured. Everybody was tortured on these sides. Now, this is something, right? The FBI doesn't, have clean hands in this, but they didn't do physically the torture. It was the CIA that did this. They just passed questions to the CIA because the CIA is not. They don't have what it takes in regards to interrogation. CIA, they're ignorant regarding the CIA. The FBI has long experience, especially New York field office, Washington field office, right? Phoenix, Oklahoma City. So they have these seasoned agents that dealt with counterterrorism. CIA doesn't. They have a bunch of analysts that don't know what the fuck they're doing, right? Now, the field officers, they would know, but they're not involved in this. They're not involved in any of this. The analysts are, the office people, the people that handle analytical information only cables, priority cables, type things of this nature. And they disseminate this information. Who do they disseminate to? Policymakers. That's who. And what they do with the information is whatever, right? Whatever. Hey, this is what we got. So you have a bunch of analysts collecting information, and they don't know how to, talk to these terrorists, right? Alleged terrorists. And so the FBI is involved. They get the FBI, and the FBI doesn't want to get there and say, "Hey, we don't do torture. We're bound by American laws, and we don't do that. Now you guys can do whatever you want. We'll pass you the questions. We'll help you." And that's what they did, right? It's alleged Ali Soufan knew this. I don't know, but he wasn't involved with the torture of Abu Zubaydah. In fact, he was getting somewhere with Abu Zubaydah. In fact, Ali Soufan and another agent actually went to the bedside of Abu Zubaydah and said, they showed him pictures. And that's how Abu Zubaydah pointed out and said, Mukhtar, how do you know about Mukhtar? And he said, oh, we know everything about Mukhtar. But they didn't know anything. Mukhtar is the nickname of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. And Abu Zubaydah said on his bedside, this is before he was tortured. Okay. Can't say he was tortured. He said that this is the man who talked about the planes operation. And Ali Soufan played off. He said, yeah, we know about that. But they didn't know. And they ran out, and I forgot who was with them. And they, hit a gold mine, right? We got to capture this guy. So, but what happened? The CIA took over Abu Zubaydah's case. And what did they do right away? Torture the living shit out. Why? Because that's all they know. CIA knows violence. And when you get CIA contractors like Bruce Jessen and James Mitchell, right, they come with the SEER program, they bring it to the Department of Defense, and they say, hey, listen, we can run these programs, reverse psychology on these people, train them to basically tell us information with the threat of violence. Well, that's not giving information. And the 2014 Senate report, which is one of the most important documents released in the last 50 years, basically says in the report that, and thank you, Daniel Jones, basically said that the information that was given through torture did not stop terrorist attacks, didn't prevent future attacks, and didn't give the intelligence community any pertinent information that they didn't already have. So the CIA lied about the whole thing. So it was like a money grab. It was it was millions and millions of dollars poured into this program. It was like 400 million, something like that. Could be wrong about the number. But that's what they were charged. They were charged with torturing these people, and they can't use the information. And you got to say to yourself, we can't use this information because the torture doesn't work. CIA has a long, sordid history of torture. There's documents going back to the 1950s and 60s that are run by committees telling the CIA, and the CIA's own inspector general reports that come out and said that torture doesn't work. It just elicits false information. That's how the Iraq War started. They tortured Sheikh Ibn al-Libi, a Libyan national, links to Al-Qaeda, allegedly, was sent to Egypt because the United States didn't torture at the time. They knew they did at the behest of the CIA, and they tortured the living shit out until what he said. Oh, yeah, Al Qaeda was procuring chemical and biological weapons along with Al Qaeda. Colin Powell went right to the United Nations Security Council, said this is enough to go to war with, and guess who was sitting right behind him? George Tenet. That's where the information came from, but it was false because afterwards, investigators found out that Al Qaeda was never in Iraq. So they went back to Libby. Why'd you give us false information? He goes, I told you whatever you wanted to hear to stop the torture. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. So you got to wonder why the CIA did this. And I think, I have theories, but in speculation, is that the CIA didn't have much information on 9/11. As for specifics, I think they might have gotten played maybe by the Saudis and Israelis, who may have had specific information, but we don't know because they were all deported out of the country. Did the CIA have enough information? I think they did. They could have prevented 9/11 if they shared, say, information about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi in California with the FBI. FBI could have detained them right there, could have stopped part of 9/11, maybe all of 9/11. The NSA, the gold mine of data, listening to bin Laden's satellite phones all throughout the 1990s and the Al-Qaeda communications hub in Yemen for 6 years, 1996 to 2001. What do you think they were talking about in those phones? Huh? Right? We won't know because they don't declassify these files and nobody's asking for them besides myself and Paul Thompson and Kevin Fenton. So, the backbone of 9/11 is right here. But yet the CIA says, well, you know what? We'll just torture the shit out of these people to give us the information. They're probably hiding information because they were worried about future attacks. State Department was. They said, ramp up, whatever. Donald Rumsfeld signed it off. Torture program approved by Cheney and Bush, approved by the Defense Department under Donald Rumsfeld, went through White House lawyers, which way they could finagle about Geneva Convention, November 2001, bingo, we don't apply Geneva Convention to the foreign nationals that are labeled by the President of the United States, which is supposed to be labeled by the Department of Justice. So they gave the war powers to George Bush and expanded them. They're still in effect today. So the CIA is partially to blame here. Big part of the blame. And, it sucks because Bin Lep and Farik Amin, yeah, they're not involved with U.S. attacks, and they could go back to Thailand to serve out the rest of their lives in prisons. But they didn't want to serve their time at Guantanamo Bay because they would have been forever detainees. Not charged with anything because they can't use anything because the CIA knew that by torturing these people, we couldn't use the information elicited from torture to prosecute these people. What do you think that resonates with the 9/11 co-conspirators allegedly? All of them. All of them are going to be off. That's why there's no trial. There never will be. Because the lawyers for these defendants are salivating at the mouth, waiting for the chance to go to trial. Come on, come to trial, because the prosecution doesn't have anything. All the information was elicited from torture. All of it, whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. So the United States, the public of the United States, the victims' families especially, should be spitting in the face of George Tenet, should be spitting in the face of James Paffett, the director of operations. Tom Wilshire, the deputy director of the Bin Laden Issue Station, Cody Malik Station, spitting in the face of Richard Blee, the chief of station, because these are the people that withheld information from the FBI and State Department and hoarded the information. Also was involved with, the higher-ups were involved with the enhanced interrogation techniques, which elicited false information and information we can't use even if it was true because it was elicited through torture, through duress. Thank you, CIA, you piece of shit agency. And I will forever, as long as I have breath, be its loudest and most vocal critic regarding this issue. Never mind your, despicable history. But the agency will forever be known as a bloodlust agency that was built on lies, deceit, and violence throughout the inception and the rest of your careers. And I'll damn George Tenet's name and jam Cofer Black and Tom Wilshire, Richard Blee, and James Pavitt, and all these, and the analysts like Alfred Ambikowski, Michelle Ann Casey, and the rest of them scumbags that they are for withholding information that about 2 Al-Qaeda operatives inside the United States, and you were running a black operation, a covert operation with the Saudis. Thank you to the Candace Trail document, probably the most important document in our lifetime of the last 30 years, which actually shows definitively that the CIA was running an illegal operation inside the United States, and nobody wants to talk about with the Saudi Mohammed, the intelligence arm. Nobody wants to talk about it. Why? Because we're naming names. That's why. People like to sit back and talk about New World Order, Illuminati, and all these vague, baseless terms. That's a threat to nobody. You want to, you know, maybe I'm naive to think that there's a sense of justice, but that's what keeps me going. Right? That's my rant. Sorry about it. But yeah, it frustrates me. It frustrates me a tiny bit. Okay. As usual, any breaking news regarding 9/11 or 9/11 related areas, you'll be the first to know without prejudice and without bias. See you in the next video. Thanks for tuning in.